I'll just explain just briefly. It's the format we've been using. Patrick will be asking the questions, and then City Council may ask lead-in or follow-up questions, from your answer. So that's kind of the format we've been using. I guess, do you have any questions of us before we start?
Nope.
Well, with no further ado, let's.
Intros?
Oh, I always forget that. How do I forget that? I am Mayor Kevin Wallers.
Councilmember Zach Rails.
Councilmember Jeff Miller.
Councilmember Brian Salvi.
Councilmember Kim Gullickson.
Welcome, Holly. So we've got 17 questions that we'll be asking, and we've got an hour. If for some reason, if we fall behind, I'm going to be keeping track of time, and I'll let you know that. But appreciate your thoughtful responses.
All right,
So,
thank you.
yes. Holly, describe your approach to working with a mayor and council that may have differing priorities or political perspectives. How do you maintain trust and forward momentum?
Sure. So working with the council, I would expect that you're going to have different opinions and perspectives on a lot of things. My approach would be, for maintaining the trust, would be listening. I want each member of the council to feel like their perspective and their issues are valued and heard. And I think political perspectives, try to kind of manage that just through fairness. Again, listening and making sure that your opinions feel valued and heard. Maintaining trust, again, if there's a discussion with a council member about something city related that needs to be shared with everybody, I want to make sure that that information is shared across the board. If a council member asks me for information, let's say one council member comes to me and asks for information, I would distribute it to all council members so that everyone has the same information. And that, I think, establishes trust. I also think my credibility would establish trust with the council. And moving forward momentum, I like to say, and it's easier said than done, that once the council has made a decision on a policy or movement forward or whatever, I like to say it's okay to agree to disagree, but let's move forward and not continue to bring it up at each council meeting. Otherwise, our process is going to be very delayed, and we aren't going to get anything done. So I like to have that understanding from the beginning. We can agree to disagree, but let's move forward. And again, maintaining trust, I think, also comes with transparency, providing accurate and thorough information to all members, and creating credibility and being just open to speak with each of you, approachable, and follow through. Like if a question is asked and you're looking for additional information, I'm certainly going to be the one that's going to follow through and say, I'll get you that information. Maybe I have it already. And if the timeline is passing where I said I would get you that information, another follow-up would be, I haven't forgotten about you. I do know you need this information. I am still working on it, or I'll get it to you. If something came up or whatever. Of course, council concerns are going to be top priority because you need that information to make a decision. But if something does happen, then making sure you know you're not forgotten. So.
Thank you, Holly. The majority of Minnesota cities are statutory cities. However, the city of Morris is a charter city. Please share your knowledge of the difference between the two types of cities.
Sure. So a statutory city is run by the Minnesota statute, and which basically you have to follow that. It gives you the authority to do things. A charter city basically has their own charter, or I like to call it their own constitution, that helps them make decisions and move forward as long as, of course, it's legal within the law. So they have a little bit more leeway with some of the operating decisions they make and some of the authorities they have. I have worked in both statutory cities and charter cities. The city of Pine City was a statutory city. The city of Wilmer was a charter city, so I have had experience working in both of those instances. One thing I will say about a charter city, when a charter needs to be updated, it's pretty involved. It needs to have public input, public hearings, lots of discussion. But like I said, it gives us a little bit more leeway and authority in what we wanna do, so.
Holly, did you prefer working in one versus the other, statutory versus charter?
No, I really didn't. Wilmer was a bigger community, so they both had their pros and cons. Wilmer was bigger than Pine City, but, no, not really a preference. Seems like as long as everyone's on the same page, you can move forward, so.
How do you get to know department heads and other key staff? What methods have you used or will you use to collaborate with staff to ensure that you are tapping into their abilities and assessing their skill levels?
That's a very long question.
It is.
I'm glad it's in front of me.
Yes.
In order to get to know department heads, and this is kind of my standard procedure, is I would like to meet with each of them individually at the beginning of my tenure and listen to, what are their strengths within their department that they feel are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Where do they need help? Are there tools or resources that they need to better do their jobs or their department to do their job? So starting with that open communication, that's how I want to get to know the department heads and realize what their strengths and weaknesses are. The other key staff, same concept. I did talk about at the last session about having maybe a citywide meeting, team meeting. It sounds like I'm a team meeting person, but I'm really not. I think if you're gonna have a meeting, it needs to be productive and it needs to stay on time. So having an agenda with a strict timeline, I think, is important too, because everybody has things to do and I don't wanna waste anybody's time. But in the beginning, it might be important to have a group meeting so everyone can get to know me. If that doesn't work, or if people can't show up, setting up a one-on-one time with them. I also think it's important, with the fire department being all volunteers, to make some time to go and meet some of the volunteer firefighters as well. I'm guessing they probably have their monthly meetings or whatever, and that would be a good time for me to show up and introduce myself so they're familiar. So that would be another way. And then used to collaborate with staff. Again, when you talk about performance reviews, a lot of times those are once a year. I don't think that they're valuable once a year. I think ongoing, consistent feedback is important, and I think that's a good way to also tap into department heads' abilities and capabilities. And so whether it's positive feedback, like, hey, I saw you did this, or you addressed this situation very quickly, having that positive feedback is important. Also having the negative, the constructive feedback, not negative, but the constructive feedback. Tapping into their abilities and assessing their skills, again, it's more of an observation thing, I believe, and also hearing from other staff. I don't want, per se, tattletales, but if someone is seeing a concern, I would like that brought to me professionally and respectfully, to say, I'm seeing a disconnect here, or something like that, and then I can address that individually with that particular individual or within that department. So, again, I think everyone has the ability to do their jobs in a good way. It's just a matter of, do they have the resources and the tools to do that? And I want to empower the staff to be the best they can be and successful in their roles. We have a lot of staff that have been here a long time, and I would hope to keep it that way.
Great. Thank you. Holly, walk us through how you prepare and present an annual budget to an elected body, particularly during times of constraint or competing interests.
So my budget process goes like this. I would obviously work with finance, but get the budget from the previous year, what the budget was, what was expended, and then hand it to each department head to create their budget for the upcoming year. As part of that, I would like a memo or a description of why are you asking for this increase, what is it for, and why did you decrease this? Then we can have a good feel for what the department heads are looking for, in that memo, and put it all in a book. I know I'm being a little more detailed than it probably should be, but put it all in like a 3-ring binder or some kind of a binder. Each council member would get one with the memo demonstrating, why are these requests being made? Why aren't they? And then as part of that process, again, another meeting, but you have to talk with the staff and have to understand what they're thinking. The memo is a good starting point, and then discussing with them, is this a need, is this a want, is there another efficiency we can find within your department so we can save money or move some of the funds around. So I think that's one way I would present the budget, especially to the staff at first, and then to the elected bodies. So you guys, there are financial constraints are a real thing, all over, for every city, every county, for the state, everywhere. And so, again, I think it's going to be a lot of discussion. I think you need to start your budget early. Don't want to wait until the last minute. There's a lot of meetings that are going to have to be with the city council so that we can work through it. But again, I think starting it early is important. And I think being open to questions, for sure. Like if a council member wants to come and discuss something with me, maybe not even at a council meeting about a particular item in the budget, I would like to know that. And then if I need additional feedback from the department that put that budget together, I can get that and bring it to the council meeting so everybody can be privy to the information. So that's kind of how I would approach the budget process. But again, open, transparent, providing as much information as possible. You have to compare expenditures from last year to where your budget was at. Are you over? Are you under? And if you're over, why are you over? I always use public works examples. I felt that when I was with the department heads, but like plowing. Why did we spend so much on plowing this year? Well, probably because we had so much snow. How can we manage that next year? How do we, kind of come up with a good number that we can use for plowing, etc. So.
Great, thank you. Holly, what is your experience with unionized workforces, and how do you approach labor negotiations while maintaining positive labor management relationships?
Sure. So my experience with unionized workforces comes in a couple of different ways. At the city of Willmar, I wouldn't say we were technically a union, but the supervisors and department heads had a contract, and I was on that negotiating team for the supervisors, and so I have that experience from that end. At the county, I think we had about 9 unions. I forget, I could count on my fingers, but close enough. About 9 unions, and I was, as the personnel director, that was one of my responsibilities, was to negotiate those contracts. And I think part of negotiating contracts, you have to keep in mind, the employees' needs or wants, as well as how does that fit into the city's financial structure. There has to be compromise. I think that there has to be, the discussions and the negotiations need to be professional, and they need to be respectful. I have, while I was working at Mille Lacs County, I did meet a lot of different union representatives, and they kind of travel around. So I know a lot of the agents that have helped with the negotiations, and so that helps. I think having a good relationship with those folks, I'm losing the term. It's not a union rep, it's a union steward. Yeah, thank you. And having a good relationship with them also helps. An example would be, so we had a labor attorney that was helping us with negotiations for one of our departments at the county. And she had come to me and said, do you think you could have the conversation with this union steward? Because her and I do not have a good relationship. I would rather you have that discussion with her. So I think it's important to have a good relationship with the union stewards as well. And, the staff, of course, they're going to ask for, the most possible that they can get, that they know that they're not going to get everything they ask for. And I think to just be clear with them, like that you understand what they're looking for, you have taken all of that information in, and then, you know, kind of compromising from that point of view. The other thing I was thinking about is, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Let me think for a minute. Going back to my union negotiation times, I guess it'll come to me later. But basically, professional with them, and going from there, I guess. You have to have a positive attitude. They also have to, you know, as the city manager, you're involved in those negotiations, right? And I think by the time we get to those negotiations, I will have established trust amongst the staff, all the staff, and I will know everyone's name, and I will know each person that walks into City Hall. And so I think developing that trust early also helps with negotiations, because I don't want them to think that we're trying to, you know, do something secretive or pull something over them. So I think that's also important. I can't remember what my other train of thought was, but I think you get the idea.
Let us know when it comes back and we'll
Okay.
jump to that. Thank you, Holly. Economic development and redevelopment is important to Morris. Can you share specific examples where you played a direct role in advancing development or redevelopment efforts?
Yeah, sure. When I was at the city of Pine City, I was heavily involved in the EDA there. As the city administrator, I was the representative for the city. And also, we had an investment that we were trying to fill. And so we had that shovel ready. We went through the process to get that shovel ready, so if businesses wanted to come in, it was ready to go. So that was one piece that I did there. I was also on a group called GPS 45 something, and it was based on location. And that was also an economic development group. And we worked as a group to bring in development into the area, not just the city, but the surrounding areas, because anything in the surrounding area too is going to be helpful for economic development and, you know, getting people in the community and tax base and all of that. So I was involved in that as well. Also at Pine City, we were working with the hotel. We tried really hard to get a hotel in the city of Pine City because they do not have one. So I did have meetings with the developer frequently. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because the developer wanted the city to pay for the utilities to go across the I-94 bridge, which was extremely expensive. So unfortunately, we didn't get it in here, but I did have those conversations. I did work with the developer. A couple different ones actually came and tried to get within Pine City, but the standard procedure was, you know, you have to pay to extend the utilities to your business. So those didn't turn out. Also I can talk about in Wilmer too, not just business development, but subdivision development and those types of things, working with the developers there and the community to get infrastructure in, get those housing things ready to go. So I've done a lot of that. And then also in my role as an engineer for some of the private firms that I've worked for, that's always a big thing that we work on is development and bringing in businesses and then helping them find a good spot to locate, where are the utilities going to work, that kind of thing. So I have done a lot of it. I can't say I have directly brought in a specific business into a community. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I really haven't. But I have helped the process of getting those folks geared up and ready to go so that they know what to expect. Also, with development, the other key piece is, you know, does it fit into the comprehensive plan? Where is that going to go? We have to pay attention to our comprehensive plan. There's a reason that's put together. People put a lot of work into putting the comprehensive plan together, so you want to make sure that any development happens appropriately. And then the financing piece, is there tax abatement, is there a TIF district, or what is that? So using all of the tools. Also working with the city, a city of Wendell, which is a very, very tiny city. And they are trying to get a housing development in their community. They're one of my clients currently, and looking for grant funding for them to get that housing development going, because they are expecting a large expansion of dairy workers and need a place to house them because there's no housing in Wendell. So working with some grant opportunities for them as well to get that development rolling. So lots of different examples, I guess.
Just a follow-up question to that. There are a lot of grant opportunities out there. What tools do you use to, I guess, keep up with that? You know,
So that's a great question. It is very challenging to keep up with all of that. There's a couple different things. I have been to a few conferences and trainings where they talk about different funding opportunities. There's one down in the cities. I haven't been there for a while, but there's a finance technical conference that they talk about different ways to finance projects. And some of the engineering conferences I go to, the Minnesota Clerks and Finance Officer conference I've been to, they talk about the funding things. And also talking with my professional colleagues, other cities, how they're funding things, how they're doing things. I have a pretty wide network of folks that I can rely on and talk to in my professional world, so that's another good way. League of Minnesota Cities posts a lot of funding opportunities on their website frequently, and so that's another good resource to use. And then my connections with, the rural development, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So some of the funding things that I know about are just things that I know from my many years of experience. So, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Holly, how do you ensure consistent interpretation and enforcement of city code and ordinances, especially when facing public pressure or criticism?
So I like this question because I'm kind of black and white when it comes to policies and ordinances, which some people agree with, some people don't, and that's fine. But in my opinion, that's why we have the codes and the ordinances in place, and so that everyone can be treated fairly. As far as interpreting them, my view is they should be interpreted the same way every time. So if you interpret it one way, I think you should interpret it the same way every time. Easier said than done. Also, for example, the city code, like the zoning code or whatever, there's staff, we have staff that probably work with that on a daily basis. I'm not sure in Morris, but sometimes there are. They're the experts, so having that discussion with them. Hey, I'm interpreting it this way, do you agree with that or not? Or even if we don't have staff for that, maybe it's a matter of reaching out to someone in the staff that maybe has had some experience with, I don't know. And then facing public pressure, I think the thing to remind the public about is these ordinances are in place so that things can be done fairly and transparently. And so if the public has a concern with how something's interpreted, I would highly encourage them to come and talk to me, discuss it with me. I'll listen to their concerns and review what they're talking about and try to explain why I interpret it this way and the ramifications of maybe, or the pros and cons if we try to do it some other different way. So I think just having that discussion, making sure that they feel comfortable coming in and bringing up their concerns, that's kind of how I would face the public pressure and criticism. Obviously, you're not going to make everybody happy. And I've always said, if you're making everybody happy, you're doing something wrong. So I know that everybody's not going to be happy at the same time.
Holly, what would be your steepest learning curve related to the position of a city manager in Morris?
I think let's see, steepest learning curve. I've been asked this question before, and I think, I don't want to sound arrogant or anything, but I think my steepest learning curve would just be learning the personalities that I'm working with, learning the personalities of the council and the staff and the partners that we work with. I think that would be a learning curve, because you have to get to know people, you have to know how they communicate, you have to know how they receive information. Not everybody receives their information the same way. So learning that piece, and I think coming into Morris, that would be probably my biggest learning curve. I have a lot of experience working in cities, counties, government work, so that like the standard operational day-to-day stuff doesn't worry me at all. But I think I think it's important to get to know everybody and how they communicate. And, they call that emotional intelligence, and I feel like I have pretty good emotional intelligence, but need to learn to do that. So, and I think too, I'll just add, the mayor talked a lot about different individuals in the community that have their businesses and kind of the history of those businesses. I think that'll be also a learning curve, getting to know who are the players per se, who are the business owners, what's the history there. The mayor talked about, well, this was started by so-and-so's grandpa, and now it's the son or whatever, and the daughter running it. I think knowing that history is also important, and I think that would be a learning curve as well.
This is a question that is not on your list there, Holly, but how do you differentiate between being a coworker and a supervisor? How do you differentiate between?
I think, a supervisor has to be a leader. And a supervisor has to not be afraid of conflict. So I would probably characterize that as the difference. As a supervisor, you want to be the leader. But I also don't think a supervisor should be viewed as not a coworker. Because everybody is here to do and serve the same way. But to be a supervisor, you need to be a leader. You need to be able to make decisions. You need to be able to make informed decisions. You need to be that bridge between staff and council, or so that everything is communicated correctly. Everybody needs to know their roles. But yeah, as a supervisor, I think being approachable. As a coworker, I think, like I said before, everyone is here because they have a certain expertise. And I wouldn't want to put the city manager on a pedestal over anybody else. But as a supervisor, you have to be a leader, and you have to lead by example.
And the main part of the question presented was for your ability to be able to draw that line between being
Sure.
the group we're looking for the well-being of our community, and you're the city manager. Ultimately, it is your decision, or you need to be the one to make your decision, or not have the fear of, I'm going to offend them because we're all on the team together. But ultimately, you are the leader if you're hired to be the city manager, and the comfort level for you to do that.
Yeah, and like I said earlier too, I'm not afraid of conflict, and I'm not afraid to state an opinion. I have an HR background also, which is a very challenging position, because you have to make those uncomfortable decisions, and you have to have those uncomfortable conversations. So I think when you separate coworker and supervisor, you need someone who's also able to have those uncomfortable conversations and explain, you could do this better, you could do this another way. We all want to get to the same end goal, but here's how I would suggest you do that. So being able to provide guidance also as a supervisor, I would see that as something too. I want people to be able to come to me and ask for advice so that I can guide them as their supervisor.
Thank you.
Yes.
This position involves joint powers and regional collaboration. How do you, Holly, approach partnerships where authority, funding, or accountability is shared?
So regional collaboration, in the last 2 years, I have been working in business development. So I have developed a lot of relationships with cities within a 100-mile radius of Fergus Falls. I think I visited every single city within a 100-mile radius. I've also developed a lot of relationships with counties within that 100-mile radius. So I've begun that work already as far as making those connections. to approach partnerships, I always have said, and I think I said it to the mayor earlier today, it's kind of all about who you know and the relationships that you establish. So I approach those partnerships with, first, a trusting relationship. You have to create that trust with those. And authority, approaching partnerships where authority, funding, and accountability is shared. So when you develop those relationships, you develop trust amongst each other. And I think also being very upfront and direct about those partnerships, about who's doing what who has what authority over what, and discussion. A lot of discussion needs to happen. I think as far as funding goes, I think you need to have, obviously, you need to have an agreement of, you know, and I'm going to use Public Works as an example again. If you're doing an intersection improvement, let's say a new signal or something, you're working with MnDOT, you're working with the county, and you're working with the city, all have different legs of the intersection. So you have to have an agreement of who's going to pay for this, who's going to pay for this leg of the intersection, who's going to pay for the maintenance on the signals. Are you going to split it? Is one city going to do it? Is one entity going to pay for that or not? So I think trying to air out all of the issues that can come up with the partnership, brainstorming. You know, if you're looking at a partnership with fire service, you know, you have to have those understandings ahead of time, kind of looking ahead and seeing what issues might come up. Another way I would probably approach that is looking at other partnerships around the area. Who's doing what? Like I said, I have met lots and lots of people in lots of different cities, and everybody does things a little differently. And so I think doing a little benchmarking is a good thing when you approach those partnerships to see how it's working and how it's not working. And so having those established relationships to have those conversations, I think, is also important. Regional collaboration is huge because it can help save on resources. It can help financially. It can increase efficiency. So I think, yeah, I guess I would approach it in that way with transparency, honesty, credibility, and conversations, relationships. It's about relationships.
Thank you. What strategies do you use to stay current on legislative changes affecting local government? And how do you translate that information into action for the council?
So staying current on legislative changes, again, is a lot of the similar resources for funding. The League of Minnesota Cities is huge. And that's a great place to get that information. I'm on the mailing list for their bulletin, and that helps. So that's a huge, huge piece. I'm hoping that the city is a member of the League of Minnesota Cities. Most of them are, but so that's a big piece. I think also other legislative changes, again, partnerships or communities that I've talked to, conferences that I go to. One of the big topics a lot of times at the engineering conference and at the Minnesota Clerks and Finance Officer conferences is legislative and what's upcoming. At the last conference, I was just at the City Engineers Conference, and they had a legislative update. They had a session, an hour-long session on legislative update and what's happening. They had a session on economic, what's the economic growth look like, economic forecasting, that kind of thing. So those conferences are very valuable, and you wouldn't know that unless you go there, right? So, but I've been going to that one for a long time. The AMC, the League of Minnesota, like I said, the League of Minnesota Cities, they have their district meetings too, I believe, still, to go to those. And again, talking with your partners, that's how I would stay up to date on that. I think that's the easiest way. Getting on mailing lists, things like that.
Thank you. Tell us about a time you had to manage a high stress or crisis situation. What was your role, and how did you lead through it?
Think about that one. High stress situation. I'm thinking. And I hate always going back to Public Works, but those are the things that stick in my mind. But I would say a flooding situation is a pretty high crisis situation. In the city of Wilmer, we had an intersection that flooded pretty much every rainstorm. So you wouldn't think it was a crisis situation, but the water actually came up to the basements of the houses almost every time. So my role at the time, I was the Public Works Director, City Engineer. And we had come up with a good strategy with our Public Works, like you need to block off the intersection when it rains, watch the weather, that kind of thing. The residents, a couple of them became very frustrated, of course, because they're always getting flooded. So I handled that piece of the resident being frustrated by including them on the Public Works Committee so they could come and listen to what we're doing to try and address the situation. And so that was not necessarily emergency, sort of emergency, but we knew it was gonna happen every rainstorm. So we were prepared for it, but I think preparation is key. Another probably high stress or crisis situation would be COVID, which that was pretty high stress when I was at Mille Lacs County. I was the assistant county administrator at the time. And all of a sudden you're told to shut operations down. Everybody goes home. With the staff of 250 or more, it was kind of a quick crisis, let's figure this out kind of mode. And so I was also the HR director, and so that played a big role in how we got folks home. Working with IT to make sure everybody had computers to take home with them. Making sure we had some policies in place for when people are working at home. That kind of thing. Check-in things, so check-ins when employees had to check in, how are they gonna do meetings, just kind of the whole operations of how the county was gonna function with no staff at the courthouse. Building plans, how are we gonna review building plans if people can't come and bring them here to the county? How are we gonna manage our health and human services folks that visit on a daily basis? So kind of handling all of those things because we had to keep our services going, and those are critical services for our health and human services folks. And so my role, again, was as HR and as assistant county administrator. I played a pretty big role in making sure people understood. The other part was determining, if you remember, we had to determine who was what do you call it, a essential employee and who was not an essential employee. That kind of hurts morale a little bit. Like, are you an essential employee? You can maybe come in the office. If you're non-essential, we're sending you home, but we don't really think you're non-essential, but you're just categorized as not essential. So managing that with the folks too was interesting and a new challenge. But we managed it very well, and we didn't get any complaints from county residents as we were shut down for that period of time. And so I think our operations went off successfully. So I guess that would be another crisis or emergency situation. And then bringing people back to the office was also part of that. Folks didn't want to have their temperature taken when they came into the office, but that was part of our policy at the time. They didn't want to answer the questionnaire of whether you're sick or not. So that was another piece to manage that. So I consider COVID a pretty big crisis and emergency to try and deal with, especially the way it was just, okay, everybody shut down. Okay. So
You were up in Mille Lacs County during that time then?
I was, yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, it was challenging times, for sure.
Very, very interesting. I learned a lot.
Holly, how do you prioritize infrastructure investment and long-range planning while balancing short-term operational needs?
So, short-term operational needs, I think, are gonna probably be the priority, because if something's going wrong, we need to make sure that those day-to-day activities are happening. Long-term planning, I think that continues on day-to-day also, like you need to add that into your calendar. And I think, like I said before, maybe it was with the other group, but infrastructure planning, that's pretty long-range planning. You have to really plan ahead. You know, some of the funding lists are 6-8 pages long, and you want to be able to be on that list. And so prioritizing infrastructure that way, I think we need to have a pretty solid capital improvement plan. And when you put that capital, I was on a committee that, I led the committee on capital improvement planning in Wilmer. It was for all departments. And what we did is we had a scoring sheet basically for all the capital improvement requests so that we could prioritize them with our planning. And on that list, was it a public safety issue? Is it a state mandate? Is it a want or is it a need? Is it a recreational need? Is it a community, some need? That kind of thing. So then we could kind of rank all the capital projects and where we were gonna spend our money. And so that was very helpful. Also brought it, to the council so they could see that and they can understand, some of the budget constraints we may or may not have. And so that was a good exercise in infrastructure investment and capital planning. Like I said with Pine City, that infrastructure investment, trying to get that utilities across the interstate, probably cost prohibitive, right? So we need to find a different place to have for folks to come in. And so you have to plan for that infrastructure. In Wilmer, when we were putting in businesses and adding infrastructure, always planning to extend the developer extending the utilities to the next block or to the end of the development so that the next developer could come in and connect there. That always didn't happen. So you got to bring it to the end of the development. Whether there's a house there now or not, you got to bring it to the end of the development so then you can plan for the next infrastructure. Seems simple, but it didn't happen in Pine City, so who knows if it's happening everywhere else. So that's also a good way to plan for infrastructure needs. And again, long-range planning, I think the city of Morris has been really proactive in their development and how they're planning ahead. And I would probably, being new coming in, I'd want to see probably pick Blaine's head a little bit, his brain a little bit, and see how he managed that and how he went forward, if he's willing, of course. But it would be interesting to see kind of his thought processes too. Because whatever he did, it worked, in my opinion.
With your experience in engineering, did you ever get into city projects where they're doing street improvements, city water, sewer, things like that?
Yep. I've designed some and I've inspected some and I've done cost, assessments for the
Right,
assessment process for some, yeah.
Yeah, because you're familiar with how we use the assessment process. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Holly, we've got about 20 minutes left and we've got 4 more questions. We want to make sure that we have sufficient time for that last question. So the city of Morris has an engaged group of citizens who are with us today.
Mm-hmm.
How would you get to know the community if you were the next city manager, and what specific process might you use?
There's a couple things I thought about with that. As far as, because I know that the Morris community is pretty active, pretty involved. One thing came to my mind, I was kind of brainstorming a few things, would be, I call them like a coffee talk. Maybe going to a cafe or somewhere where people gather, once a month or twice a month, and just advertising that, I'm here. If you have any questions or concerns you want to bring up, come and meet with me. I'll be here from this time to this time. Seems like it, for some it might look like, oh, it's a waste of time for the city manager to be out of the office and go and have coffee. Well, I don't drink coffee, but I would have Diet Coke. But anyway, I think it's valuable. Then the citizens would know, yep, she's available. She's willing to listen. Another way I was thinking about it is, a newsletter. Maybe putting an article in the paper every couple weeks, once a month, something like that, just to give an update of what's going on in the city. Allowing, office time for folks to come in. I don't want to have a community member come into the office and say, I want to meet with the city manager, and then the city manager says, no, she's not available. that would never be said. It would be said in a way that, well, she's not available right now, but can we schedule a time for you to come in? I always want to be available, whether it's at that moment or some other moment. So I think that's important. I think also another way to engage the community is just being visible, being at events, celebrating the successes of the community. Maybe there's a ribbon cutting, maybe there's a parade or something else going on, but being visible in the community. You know, if there's a open house somewhere, something like that, I think being visible is important too. So that's a few of the ways I was thinking about. So yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Great, thank you. What do you see, Holly, as the most critical role of a city manager in a community like Morris over the next 5-year period?
So I think one of the most critical roles is continued development. Morris is a growing community and we want to see it continue to grow. And so I think the role of the city manager is to ensure that those connections and opportunities are there, and to push for that. So I do think a critical role will be to be involved in that piece and to continue to grow Morris. I think another critical role, based on your last question, is to have a city manager that shows investment in the community and shows investment in the residents of the community, similarly to what I just answered. But it appears to me you need a city manager that's available, approachable, and honestly knows what they're doing. You need a city manager that knows what they're doing. And then over the next 5 years, also I think another role would be analyzing and looking at staff growth. You know, as the city gets bigger, is there going to be a need for more staff? Or looking at staff efficiencies. Do we have too much staff? Is there ways we can combine roles or something like that? But I think having an overall look of the structure of the city to make sure we're meeting everyone's needs. And again, I think also the role is making sure we are doing good capital planning. We're being fiscally responsible, planning for the future, not just next year, but we have to plan financially for multiple years at a time. You can't just do it year by year because you never know what's going to happen. I also think another critical role of the city manager would be figuring out maybe how we're going to approach unfunded mandates. That's a big thing right now, and I think there may be more coming. And so the city manager needs to be on top of that. What are the unfunded mandates? How can we address them? Do we have any ideas? So that kind of thing too. And then again, continuing to develop relationships in the region. Because like I said, finances are tight, and the more partnerships you can have, you can potentially save your resources. So.
Great. Holly, what is it about the city of Morris that makes you want to be the next city manager?
So the reason I would like to be the next city manager is I think that Morris has a huge investment in their community. They're very prideful of their community, and I like to see that. Also very thoughtful growth, and that's exciting. I like the challenge of being in a community that's growing. I think that's going to be a good thing. I really, really want to get back into government work. I think me coming back shows my commitment to the community, and that I really want to help in the community and be an asset to you guys. So it's fairly close for me, and so that is a positive thing. There's a lot government work around me, and so this was exciting to see this come up again. And you know, I've met you folks now a couple times, and I think that you would be a great group to work with. I think you guys have a lot of knowledge, and you've been here a long time, so you have a lot of history. I would like to pick the mayor's brain as well. He's got a lot of history. I'm wondering if he's going to pass down his notes from his tour for the next person. So no, I think it's a great community, and I would be very excited about it. I also think having the college here is a huge asset. I think, that's exciting, working with the college community. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that this is gonna be the time. We'll see.
So Holly, the last and final question, do you have any questions for the council?
Yeah, I have one question, and I couldn't find it on the internet. Are there like service clubs in the Morris area? For example, I was a member of the Rotary in Wilmer, I was a member of the Rotary in Fergus Falls, and so I'm wondering if there are service clubs in this area, that I could potentially seek out.
Well, the Lions Club is a club, a local service club. There's
Eagles, Legion,
Okay,
both with auxiliaries, or there's memberships in, with the Eagles anyway, there are memberships with both the auxiliary and the regular for men or women.
okay.
So, there are a lot of things that they do in the community. I'm trying to think what else we know.
Women of today is
Women
another.
are very active
Very
helping with
active,
community
yeah.
projects.
You looked around our city, a lot of those women of today are a very active group, as they alluded to, and, you know, they've contributed different projects, like when we went out past, the park there, the dog park, they were instrumental in getting that dog park done. They fundraised for park benches for around you see different, park benches around. So, yeah, that's, we got a very active Morris Women of Today group.
I think that's another good way for the city manager to be visible in the community, is being part of the service group. So that's why I asked that question.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't think I have any other questions for you guys. Do you have any more for me?
So.
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Holly.
Yes.